I've never heard of this law. I mean, it's actually laughable. It's hard to believe that it's a real law.
A metro Atlanta city that requires every household have a gun and ammo. We check out the controversy and if there's a noticeable difference in crime. All this week, we've been bringing you a series of special reports about guns and gun violence. We're calling it the gunfight. Despite the perception, there has been a dramatic drop in the homicide rate nationally. In 1993, there were 18,253 firearm-related homicides. That number drops to 11,798 5 years later. The most recent numbers in 2011 show another drop with 11,101. If you've missed any of our reports, we invite you to check them out at CBS46.com and on our mobile app.
And our Kim Passoff will take a closer look at domestic violence in this country as part of our special series, The Gunfight. Tonight at 11, Kim will bring you the story of a woman who survived being shot 3 times by someone she loved. All this week, CBS46 is taking a closer look at guns and gun violence in a series of reports called The Gunfight.
Guns are no doubt a controversial topic, and there is one metro Atlanta city that actually requires every home to have one. Up next, a closer look at what people think about that and the impact it's having on that community.
But first, a look at some gun violence numbers. In 2011, more than 100,000 people were shot in the U.S. 74,000 survived, 31,000 died. Now to the latest in our special series of reports, The Gunfight. Who owns guns in the U.S.? Well, here's a look at how it breaks down by ethnicity. According to the Pew Research Center, 41% of homeowners are white, 20% Hispanic, 19% black. There's a big debate nationwide over guns and gun ownership. While some want to ban guns, there's actually one city in metro Atlanta that requires each and every home to have a gun.
Yeah, and this is not exactly new. The Kennesaw City Council, they passed a law back in the 1980s requiring people to have a gun and ammo in their house. CBS 46 morning anchor Bobby Capel digs a little deeper into the law and wants to know whether or not it's having an impact on crime.
Gun violence and the debate over firearms seems to be front and center now more than ever. But one Georgia city has been leading the charge for more than 3 decades now. At first glance, you'd never guess that this quiet, quaint pocket of North Georgia has been ground zero for arming its residents. In fact, did you know that every single household in Kennesaw is required to have at least one gun?
I was unaware of that.
That's right. Back in 1982, Kennesaw decided to do something that no other city, to their knowledge, had ever done. The City Council unanimously passed a law requiring residents be armed with a gun and ammo in their homes. Kennesaw resident Stephen Green, a pastor there, agrees with the law, but others there don't.
Oh, that's great to me because I own guns. Actually, I hunt. So for me, as far as my protection of my family, yeah, why not?
There was a tremendous amount of interest, not only locally, nationwide, but also worldwide.
Craig Graydon is lieutenant with the Kennesaw Police Department. He says the department is neutral on the law.
We maintain one of the safest crime rates in the metro Atlanta area for a city our size, especially when you compare on a population-adjusted basis. Our violent crime rate is very low.
Do you attribute that to the law?
It probably had some impact. It's always hard to say.
Never heard of this law. I mean, it's actually laughable.
Rabbi Peter Berg supports the Second Amendment but advocates for gun control.
I don't believe that there's any statistic that demonstrates that people are safer in Kennesaw. In fact, I think it's probably the opposite, because more people having more guns is neither good for the public nor is it good for gun owners.
So what do the numbers actually say? Has the crime rate gone up since that law was passed, or has it gone down? Well, initially, there was a drop in crime, according to police, of more than 20%. Since then, levels have flattened out, but they say they remain low. Police say there is no real way to quantify one way or the other whether the law has made the city safer. Has anyone ever been prosecuted under that law?
No, because it was, even though it's written as an ordinance, it was never really intended to be an enforced ordinance. It was more or less a referendum, and the police department's never gone around and asked people, do you have a gun, and things like that.
Police say the number of people breaking the gun law is probably as high as 50%. Either way, there are no plans to change it or steer clear of the debate captivating Kennesaw.
I understand the protection part, but I don't think it should be something mandatory. I feel that it should be definitely a choice.
You get your home broken into, of course. It's sort of your fault, I guess, for not owning something like that.
Now, here's a closer look at those crime numbers from Kennesaw since 1981. And remember, that law passed in 82. And you can see in 81, for example, there were 193 burglary and larceny cases in Kennesaw. The following year, that number dropped to 146. Since then, the crime rate on a population-adjusted basis has remained about the same, with the most recent data we have from 2013 citing 487 cases. But keep in mind, their population is now 6 times what it was back in 1982. Now, Kennesaw police tell us that Nelson, Georgia, also tried passing a similar law, but it was retracted after a lawsuit was filed over the handling of that ordinance. Bobby Capel, CBS 46 News.
And our special reports continue at 5 o'clock. Coming up at 5, I'll take a closer look at other nations that have gun bans, specifically the UK and Australia, and whether or not mass confiscation prevents gun violence in those countries. It's a reality check you'll see only on CBS 46.
Then tonight at 6, we dig deeper into the mental health myth. Our Kim Passoff looks at mental health issues and their relation to mass shootings and other gun violence. If you've missed any of our reports, we invite you to check them out at CBS46.com and our mobile app. You can also give us your take on the gun debate through our social media channels.
President Obama, he's been calling for sweeping gun legislation like what went into effect for Australia and the UK a few decades ago. Would it work here? Actually, here's the question. Did it work over there? Reality check after the break. Only days after that mass shooting at the community college in Oregon, President Obama said that the United States needs to follow the lead of Great Britain and Australia, nations that instituted large-scale gun bans and gun confiscation after mass shootings on their soil. Would it work here? Maybe the more important question, did it work there? It's a reality check you won't see anywhere else.
We know that other countries, in response to one mass shooting, have been able to craft laws that almost eliminate mass shootings. Friends of ours, allies of ours, Great Britain, Australia, countries like ours.
That was President Obama speaking shortly after the community college shooting in Oregon. The president says that Great Britain and Australia are great examples of nations that have taken control of gun violence. But are they? It made me think, what is the real story behind those countries? Let's start with Great Britain. On August 19, 1987, Michael Ryan killed 15 people and wounded 15 others in a series of random shootings around Hungerford, Berkshire. He also killed his mother before taking his own life. The pistol and 2 semi-automatic rifles that he used in that massacre were all owned legally. Well, as a result, Great Britain enacted some of the world's strictest gun control measures in the late 80s and 90s. In Britain, a nation of 63 million people, more than 200,000 guns and 700 tons of ammunition have been taken off the streets over the past 15 years. So what has the result been? Well, early on, the ban appeared to have little impact, as the number of crimes involving guns in England and Wales rose heavily during the late 1990s to peak at 24,094 in 2003-2004. Since 2004, though, the numbers of crimes involving guns has actually fallen each year. In 2010 to 2011, there were 11,227 offenses, 53% below that peak number. And again, all of those numbers began to fall long after gun bans were put into place. And that's also not to say that the ban ended mass shootings in Great Britain, because it did not. In 2010, a lone gunman killed 12 people in a 4-hour shooting spree in northern England. So what about Australia? Well, this is a more dramatic example. In 1996, a 28-year-old man killed 35 people with a semi-automatic rifle in the Tasmanian city of Port Arthur. 12 days later, a gun confiscation program was rushed through the Australian Parliament. The National Agreement on Firearms all but prohibited automatic and semi-automatic assault rifles. It stiffened licensing and it stiffened ownership rules. It also instituted a temporary gun buyback program that took some 650,000 so-called assault weapons, about 1/6 of the national stock, out of public circulation. The images are pretty incredible from that time. This agreement was called a gun buyback, but it really wasn't. It was mandatory. So what were the effects of the program? Well, interestingly, there have been at least 2 major studies done on the program and gun homicides. The first was done by the University of Melbourne researchers Wengshen Li and Sandy Soardi. In 2008, they completed a report on this matter, and it said this, quote, "In this paper, we reanalyzed the same data on firearm deaths used in previous research, using tests for unknown structural breaks as a means to identifying impacts of the National Firearms Agreement. The results of these tests suggest that the NFA did not have any large effects on reducing firearm homicide or suicide rates." And a second report concluded that while the mandatory program did reduce the rate of accidental firearm deaths, it had no influence on a firearm homicide in Australia. It also did not end mass shootings. In 2002, 2 people were killed, 5 were injured in a shooting at Melbourne's Monash University. In 2011, 3 people were killed, 3 were wounded in the Hectorville siege. And in 2014, 3 people, including the gunman, were killed and 4 others injured in a Sydney hostage crisis. So what you need to know is that even with mass confiscation of weapons, Australia could not end all mass shootings, and the rate of gun homicides wasn't actually affected. But here's something else worth mentioning. The 650,000 guns confiscated in Australia, that was between 1/5 and 1/3 of all the guns in the entire country. Let's compare that now to the United States. To do the same thing here, that would require confiscation of around 105 million firearms, something that would not only be unconstitutional, but would likely become incredibly violent. In other words, mass confiscation in the United States simply cannot happen. Not right now, and possibly not ever. That's Reality Check. Let's talk about that tonight on Twitter.
Our week-long series on the gunfight continues throughout the night.
It is also the focus of our question of the day on CBS46.com. Today we ask, would very strict gun control laws like in Australia and the UK be the answer to mass shootings? So far, 13% of you say yes, 81% say no, and 6% of you are unsure. You can still vote right now on CBS46.com.
And stay with us. Coming up at 5:30, my unprecedented look at what can be a very sensitive subject. We're going inside some of Atlanta's toughest neighborhoods, and we are talking with TV judge Glenda Hatchett about what can be done about it.
Our coverage of the gunfight continues. Our CBS 46 contributor says that laws and legal loopholes are far from the only problems that we have to deal with.
I'm Mark Pettit. Tonight at 5:56 on Just a Minute on CBS 46 News. We've glorified and gamified guns in America and become numb to the consequences. I'll tell you why.
And the gunfight continues next here on CBS 46. Right after the break, Sharon is back with more of her in-depth discussion about black-on-black crime. We'll also look at new numbers.
Well, back now to the gunfight, a continuation of a very important conversation we've been having all this week. Sharon Reed went in-depth on the issue of black-on-black crime. Sharon joins us now with a closer look at the numbers that you need to see and why, Sharon, some people call this an uncomfortable conversation.
It can be, Ben, uncomfortable for me too, but the bottom line, gun violence, not just a white issue, it is not just a black issue or an issue for any race. Take a look. These are FBI statistics from the last several years. And here's a breakdown. 84% of white murder victims were killed by other whites. 14% of those victims, they were killed by blacks. As for black-on-black crime, black violent offenders choose to attack white victims 39% of the time and black victims 41% of the time. Tonight, I continue my unprecedented look at this very sensitive topic.
I feel like black on black crime, if the law killing us and we killing each other, it ain't gonna be no more of us.
First time I got shot, it was on a Friday.
At 18, I saw gun violence. Saw a lot of gun violence.
I done been shot before when I was younger.
He shot me again. He shot me in my leg. That's when I fell.
We're shooting each other because we envy each other and we want what the other man has.
They argument lead to later on somebody gonna die.
The poverty, you know, jobs, no jobs.
When he pulled the pistol out, he hit me on the back of the head and shot me in my arm.
We go all the way back to how we getting taught as young men. I was in the school for 8 years, 12 years, and I never learned nothing.
The majority of us, we get left behind. So once we get left behind, we want to take what the ones that made it through the cracks, we want to take what they have.
But what I don't experience is black helping blacks. I don't experience that.
When people see something that you got and they want it, they don't got it. So matter of fact, they're going to try to come and get it.
I don't see no one come out here black that try to help out. You understand? And I don't see that no more. And you only know what you see. So if I saw gun violence my whole life and I saw my big brother do something wrong to the next person to get what he wanted, then maybe I'm going to have to get what I want the same way.
A lot of black people feel like the only way to get that is to invade another black man's space instead of going out, getting a job, and starting from the bottom to the top.
I can't understand why we want to hurt each other and criticize each other and down each other.
These are conversations that we have in African-American homes every day.
Every day. Every day. And it is real. And I am concerned about the fact that too many black people are killing black people.
But Glenda Hatchett, former chief presiding judge of the Fulton County Juvenile Court, warns don't get caught up in statistics because they can be spun in a number of ways to suit competing agendas. Judge, there seems to be confusion, controversy.
Yep.
Black on black crime, it's not that simple.
It's not that simple because if you look statistically, there are more white people committing crimes against white people than there are black people committing crimes against black people.
But it's the rate of the killings compared to the sheer numbers that alarm Hatchett and so many others. Recent data from the Atlanta Police Department shows 92% of the victims killed this year are black.
We have got to really look particularly at what's going on in Georgia. And Georgia is 27% higher for gun-related violence than the national norm. That should be of great concern to us.
Why?
I mean, we've had a recent bill passed by the legislature in the state that says that you can take guns into restaurants, into schools, and a number of public places now. And that's okay. And we have got to get away from this Wild West mentality. There were more people between 2000 and 2010 killed in Georgia by guns than people who died in that same period in war in Afghanistan. More Americans that died in Afghanistan. And that's really telling. And what I have said to people is that if they can have the proper education and if they can feel like there is some opportunity other than coming out here and committing crimes, I think we see a shift.
Now, I asked Judge Hatchett what more she would do to stop the bloodshed. She told me intergenerational programs. She's very keen on that. Retired citizens mentoring kids and students after school. She's actually seen it work in her courtroom, Ben.
You know, Sharon, you've mentioned throughout the week that this specific conversation, black on black crime, is uncomfortable. And you say even for you. Why is that?
For me, and obviously black people, not a monolithic community, but for me, it's uncomfortable because it's as if when you let others in who are not African American, it opens up all kinds of things. The bottom line for me is a lack of hope, and it's a complicated issue. A lack of hope seems to breed other things, including a lot of violence.
Sharon, thanks. You know, folks, stay with us because tonight our Kim Passoff, she has two stories that you need to see. So often we talk about people who die from gun violence, rarely those who survive. At 11 o'clock, the story of a woman who was gunned down. But first at 6, we dig deep into the mental health myth, as it's called. Kim looks at mental health issues and their relation to mass shootings and other gun violence.
Opinions expressed during Just a Minute are not necessarily those of CBS 46 News or its employees. If you want to comment, you can go to CBS46.com and click on the Just a Minute tab. Comment there or on the CBS 46 Facebook page, or send us an email at justaminute@cbs46.com. All this week, we've tackled the controversial gunfight, and we asked our Just a Minute commentators to do the same. Mark Pettit says he was on the beach in Miami this past weekend when his thoughts on gun control crystallized. He says all he had to do was look up in the sky.
If you've been around longer than an iPad, you'll remember a TV show called Miami Vice. The bullets would fly in between drug deals, high hair, and high fashion. So I really shouldn't have been surprised when a plane flew over us on South Beach, pulling a banner that read, "Shoot machine guns," promoting a business called Locked and Loaded, which is a machine gun shooting range in Miami. Pay up and shoot 'em up. Foreigners welcome. A machine gun can fire hundreds of rounds in less than 60 seconds. It was designed for soldiers to use on a battlefield, not a babe on a banner in Miami. That's the problem in this country. We've glorified and gamified guns. Shoot a machine gun in Miami? God forbid you're mentally unstable and start shooting innocent people with one in Montana. I'm a gun owner. I believe in the fundamental right to bear arms, but I support responsible gun control, especially as it relates to automatic weapons. Unless you're in the military, you have no business firing a machine gun. I don't care how hot you are in Miami. I'm Mark Pettit.
Well, with mass shootings seeming like they're so prevalent in today's society, some are wondering about how mental illness may play a factor in gun violence.
Yeah, but is that really the case? Our Kim Passoff looks behind the numbers and digs up the truth about mental health and guns.
And as we go to break, in 2013, there were nearly the same number of deaths by guns as there were by motor vehicles. The CDC numbers show 33,636 deaths by guns, just a few hundred more car deaths at 33,804. All this week at 4, 5, 6, and 11, CBS 46 News has brought you The Gunfight. Unprecedented coverage on gun use in Georgia and beyond.
Tonight at 6, we dig deep into the mental health myth. Our Kim Passoff looks at mental health issues and their relation to mass shootings and other gun violence.
Oregon Community College shooter Christopher Harper Mercer suffered from Asperger's syndrome, according to his mom. UC Santa Barbara shooter Elliot Roger was identified by his father as having a long history of mental illness. Sandy Hook Elementary School shooter Adam Lanza had profound autism and obsessive compulsive disorder. Aurora, Colorado theater shooter James Holmes was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. We have come to know these and other mass shooters for their mental illness, but we found these faces of mental illness are the exception, playing a large role in the mental health myth of violence. Mental health is not often something we talk about until there is a mass shooting somewhere in America.
This isn't guns, this is about really mental illness.
In many of these shootings, we have people who have mental disturbances.
Do we need to do a better job in mental health? You bet we do.
Statements like those reinforce the widespread perception serious mental illness generally causes violent behavior.
Everything we see demonizes people with mental illness. There's still such a stigma.
Blaming mental illness for bad acts steers the conversation away from gun control.
The truth is that most of the violence you see just has nothing to do with people with mental illness.
According to researchers, the large majority of people with mental disorders do not engage in violence against others. In fact, fewer than 5% of 120,000 gun-related killings in the United States between 2001 and 2010 were perpetrated by people diagnosed with a mental illness. A person with serious mental illness is far more likely to be a victim of violent crime.
Why aren't we talking about what causes violence? Why aren't we looking at poverty? Why aren't we looking at the poor education so many kids are getting? I believe because it's easier to scapegoat a whole group of people.
In those rare instances that someone with a mental illness does turn violent, Ellen Yeager, Director of Policy and Advocacy for Mental Health America, Georgia, contends it is because their illness has long gone untreated.
Why are we waiting for people in crisis? A kid does not go to bed on Friday night thinking about a baseball game and wake up on Saturday morning thinking about how to kill people.
Yeager argues mental illness is like any other illness. It can turn deadly if ignored.
We don't expect people to miraculously be cured from cancer, from heart disease, from diabetes. No expectation. But a mental illness, again, we have a different mindset.
She says it is often easier and cheaper for someone with a mental illness to get a gun in the U.S. than to get proper medical care, something that must be changed.
Why aren't we willing to invest where we know we're going to get such a better outcome for these kids, for these families, for communities, for the country? I certainly can't answer that.
And while those with mental illnesses rarely turn violent, these faces remind us that they can. But there is another common thread here. Though all of these killers have been associated with the mental illness, none were being treated for that illness at the time of their mass shooting. Kim Passoff, CBS 46 News.
And so often we talk about the people who die from gun violence, rarely those who survive. Kim is back at 11 to bring us the story of women gunned down. All week long, CBS 46 has brought you The Gunfight, an unprecedented look at guns in the U.S. And tonight we look at the women gunned down. It is often by someone they know and most likely their partner.
And Kim Passoff here now with the unforgettable story of one domestic violence survivor.
April Ross knows she could have easily lost her life, as many women do, at the hands of their intimate partner. These statistics paint a frightening picture. In 2012, 1,706 women in the U.S. were murdered by men. That is more than 4 every day. 93% of those women were killed by someone they knew, the vast majority by their intimate partner using a gun. In the seconds it took to fire 3 bullets, the life of Fulton County Assistant District Attorney April Ross changed forever.
It fundamentally changes something in you.
Neither victims are in a position where they can tell us what happened.
On April 24th, 2014, April was in this car with a friend when she was ambushed.
In the passenger window, I could see him. He was just standing there. And before I could even blink, saw his hand coming up, and I don't even really remember seeing the gun.
A barrage of bullets filled her car. Shattered glass and shell casings covered this Southwest Atlanta street.
We do know multiple shots fired.
April's friend was shot 6 times. April, 3 times.
Once through the face. I think I must have thrown my arm up because one went through my arm, and the third bullet went through my back.
The bullet through her back pierced April's spine, leaving her paralyzed.
The truth of the matter is, anyone's life can change in an instant. The person who shot me was someone I knew for half my life and thought I knew very well.
Just 2 days before the shooting, April filed for divorce from her husband.
What I was told from the investigators was that he actually had an arsenal in his car.
She had never seen him with a weapon before and was shocked to learn he amassed so many weapons so quickly. After shooting April, he went to the cemetery and shot and killed himself.
It's something that nags at me every day. How could just a person like me and you every day walking around working a good job turn around and sing solo?
April spent 2 weeks at the ICU at Grady and 3 months in rehab at the Shepherd Center, a hospital specializing in spinal cord and brain injury.
One bullet can cause a lot of damage.
Dr. Anna Elmers says gunshot victims are something specialty treatment facilities like the Shepherd Center see all too often.
You're probably looking at 10 to 14% of our total spinal cord population. We have great medical care nowadays, so a lot of these patients survive and are left with lifelong deficits.
April is back at the Shepherd Center, now a year and a half after the shooting, for a checkup on a recent tendon transfer to her hand.
It's supposed to give me the ability to get a firm grip.
And just this week, she returned to her job at the DA's office to continue her work prosecuting criminals.
I never thought I would have been a victim.
Now with a new perspective as a shooting survivor, April will fight for justice for those who are shot and killed. Just this year, that number stands at 80 in her jurisdiction.
There's got to be something, somewhere a breaking point where we decide as a society what the balance is, to what it's supposed to look like. And I don't know what that's going to look like or what day that'll come, but I pray it does.
April's friend, who was shot 6 times, also survived the shooting. Again, most people who are shot do survive. When it comes to domestic violence, from 2007 to 2011, 195,700 people were shot by an intimate partner and survived. Kim Passoff, CBS 46 News.